I am the foolish crown princess who is laughed at by the palace people. So when Shaoli brought me the abortion pills, I had no doubts at all. People in the palace told me that the prince's white moonlight has returned, and the prince's child can only be born to her. I asked them stupidly, "What is white moonlight?" There was cramping in the lower abdomen and unstoppable bleeding. I seemed to understand the meaning of white moonlight, and also understood that Shaoli had always hated me. The person sitting in front of me was panicked. He was still lying to me, a fool. Rao Rao, we will have children in the future. But the imperial physician told me that I only had 1 month to live and would not be able to wait for his future. 01. On the birthday of Crown Prince Shaoli, I saw the white moonlight that was secretly mentioned by people in the palace. Miss Su, who was once famous throughout the world for her talent and beauty, she snuggled in Shaoli's arms. The two people's mouths were pressed together, biting each other tightly. The maid in the palace told me that this is called kissing, and only two people who are married and in love can do this. But Shaoli never did that to me. He never kissed me on the lips. Even when we were doing the most intimate things, he coldly asked me to turn away, which was very painful, and did not allow me to look back at his expression. Miss Su is already married, and is the princess consort of Prince Lin. King Lin died of illness last month, so she should be a widow. But he and Shaoli hid here and kept biting each other. Apparently, the palace maid also lied to me. People in the Eastern Palace call me the crown princess on the surface, but they often take pleasure in deceiving a fool like me. They tricked me into spending an entire afternoon making ginger tea to ward off the cold, but they didn't tell me that Shaoli hated the smell of ginger. I watched coldly as Shaoli scolded me, feeling annoyed. The ginger tea that he had worked so hard to brew was knocked over by him, spilling all over the floor. It seems that watching a fool like me cry is the most interesting thing. I held the birthday present for Shaoli in my hand, a sachet that took several nights and required pricking all 10 fingers to be embroidered crookedly. My name and Shaoli's were tattooed in blood, and next to it was clumsily embroidered, never separate. I stood outside the garden in a daze, watching them tangling and kissing. The woman in his arms was very beautiful, probably the most beautiful person I have ever seen. The long hair, like black algae, was tangled on Shaoli's chest. She raised her apricot eyes and called him with her rosy lips. You knew. I regretted it a long time ago. Can I come back to you again? Yunu is the prince's nickname, but Shaoli wouldn't allow me to call him that. He would get very angry. This fairy-like Miss Su could call him again and again. It seemed as if his heart was broken. I couldn't understand their roundabout way of speaking. All she saw was that the corners of Shaoli's eyes were red, and she embraced her in her arms with great hatred and force, as if she were her enemy. His voice was deep and hoarse, but I could hear the joy hidden in it. He said, Su Chuwei, you should have come back to me a long time ago. The position of the crown princess of the Eastern Palace was originally yours. 02. As he walked back to the palace, he tripped heavily. Nanny hurriedly supported me and asked me distressfully, Rara, what happened? There was only Nanny Yu in the palace. She came from the Prime Minister's mansion with me and treated me kindly. She didn't bully me just because I was not smart. I was stunned for a moment, holding my chest and said, Mammy, it hurts here. My heart feels like it's lost. There's a bloody hole. It hurts so much. Help me blow it. She relaxed her frown and blew on my chest earnestly. Be good, Rao Rao. It won't hurt if I blow on it. I snuggled into her arms and whispered, No one in the East Palace likes me. Madam, can you take me home? I don't want to be a princess anymore. The maids in the Eastern Palace were also more domineering than those in other places. They would say to me in a disdainful manner in a place where no one was around, You fool! Sooner or later you will be divorced by the crown prince and sent back to the prime minister's residence. The prince is a man of heaven. You, an ugly fool, must have accumulated 8 lifetimes of good fortune to be reborn as the daughter of the prime minister, and only then can you marry the prince. Do you think the prince is leaving all the noble ladies in the imperial capital unmarried and wants a fool like you to keep a place for Miss Su? I leaned against the corner of the palace wall in fear, holding my stomach. But I'm pregnant. There was a flash of jealousy in their eyes, and they looked at me with sympathy and sarcasm. So what? The prince will not want a child born by a fool. His legitimate son can only be born to Miss Sue. Once Miss Sue turns back, your good days as a princess will be over. Mammy wiped her tears behind my back, stroked my head, and consoled me. Rarao is such a good boy and has never made any mistakes. How could the prince let you go back to the prime minister's residence? You're going to be a mother soon, so stop saying these childish things. Mammy made my favorite plum cake. It's sweet and sour and very appetizing. I vomited for several days and couldn't eat anything, but Xiaoli didn't even notice. After eating 2 pieces, I stopped eating. I remember Xiaoli also liked to eat plum cakes. Nanny, you made them just for me. I secretly kept a few pieces for the prince to come back. It was midnight when Xiaoli returned to the East Palace. He had a faint and charming fragrance on him. The plum pastry I had hidden in my sleeve had already gone cold, and it felt icy cold against the skin of my elbow. Before I could take them out, I couldn't help but start retching. You smell bad. I retched intermittently, tears oozing out. Xiaoli's eyes were filled with cold disgust. He took a few steps back and raised his sleeves to cover his mouth and nose. After I spit it out, I suppressed my fear of him and took out the sachet that I had embroidered for a long time. This is a birthday gift for you. The crooked stitches are really not presentable. His name was on the sachet, and my fingers were stained with blood. Xiaoli took it carelessly and took a look at it. It's too ugly. I won't wear such an ugly sachet on my body. Don't bother preparing birthday presents for me anymore. After saying that, he threw it into the burning incense burner. The sachet I spent several nights embroidering by lamplight turned into a puff of smoke in an instant. 03. I sniffed quietly. Don't let yourself cry. There was a sour and swollen pain in my heart, which seemed to be about to overflow. It's a pity that Nanny is not here and can't help me blow it. I lowered my eyes and inadvertently saw the red mark on his neck. The nausea came over me again. I couldn't vomit anything but bloody bile. Xiaoli frowned and yelled at the palace maids with an ugly expression. Is this how you take care of the crown princess? Where is the pregnancy-preserving medicine? Did you give it to her today? The palace maids were so frightened that they knelt on the ground. The medicine was presented soon. He brought the abortion-preserving medicine and personally placed it to my lips, hiding the impatience in his eyes and eyebrows, and said gently, How can I not take the abortion-preserving medicine? Be good, Rarao, be obedient. I was flattered, and my ears turned red. I took the bowl of medicine from him without a doubt, and drank it all, in one gulp. I took out the plum cake hidden in my sleeve, my eyes sparkling, and handed it to him like offering a treasure. Xiaoli, this is what you like to eat. The voice stopped abruptly. The plum cake fell to the ground and broke into pieces. My lower abdomen was in severe pain, and I bit my lips tightly. A lot of blood rushed out of my body, staining my goose-yellow skirt and dripping sticky blood onto the floor tiles. I held onto Xiaoli's hand tightly, my fingers digging into his palm in pain. Xiaoli, it hurts. The flesh and blood were torn off abruptly. I could never endure such pain a second time. I cried and begged him, Go find a doctor quickly. Our baby is in trouble. Xiaoli's eyebrows were distant and tense. She held my hand tightly and said, Rarao, wait a moment. He said hoarsely, word by word, cruelly, It cannot stay. I was stunned and gasping for breath, and only understood what he said because of the severe pain. Su Chuwei is back. Those palace servants rarely lied to me. He doesn't want me or my child. When all the blood in my body was almost drained, my vision went white, and I thought I was going to die in pain. Xiao Lizai stood up in panic and rushed out of the hall. Imperial physician. Get all the imperial doctors from the imperial hospital to come here. 04. All the doctors from the Imperial Medical Bureau came, but it couldn't stop my bleeding. He put a full dose of abortion pills in his daily pregnancy-maintaining pills. Day after day, nothing could go wrong, and this child would not survive. How could one person bleed so much? The mattress was soaked. One basin after another was carried out. My soul seemed to leave my body. Floating in the air, I saw Xiao Li's face turn pale, veins popping out on the back of her hands, and she tightly grasped my pale fingers. It's just a miscarriage. Why is she bleeding so much? He's been unconscious for so long and still can't wake up. His eyes were filled with gloom. After all, she is the crown prince's consort. You must use the best medicine to save her. The imperial physician who was examining my pulse hesitated to speak, and there was a hint of pity in his eyes as he looked at Xiaoli. I asked him to keep it secret. I have a blood-drying disease, and my blood is drying up. He only had a few months to live. For Bai Yueguang, he couldn't even wait for a few months. I still remember that the imperial physician, after checking my pulse as usual, said, "This is a symptom that the crown princess has had since her mother's womb. There is no cure. Should I tell His Royal Highness the Crown Prince?" I shook my head and said slowly, "Your Highness, he won't believe it." He didn't believe what a fool like me said. I had a cold and a high fever, and I grabbed his sleeve in pain, begging him to stay with me a little longer. Xiaoli simply put on her clothes calmly and sneered, "Mu Rao Rao, don't think that I touch you because I like you and really treat you like the crown princess. You are a fool, but you have a lot of ideas. You want to use such a cheap method to win my favor and keep me? Who taught you that?" His eyes were as cold as a sword, piercing my heart fiercely, and the pain was so severe that I almost cried. I explained anxiously, I'm not competing for your favor. I just want to be with you. Xiaoli, I feel cold. I want you to hold me for a while longer." He forcefully pulled away the sleeve that I was holding, and I never saw him wear that brocade robe again. 05. The imperial physician said that if I didn't bleed and get injured, I could live longer. "My lady, the disease you have will cause more and more pain as time goes by. I am incompetent and can only prescribe some painkillers for you." I think the imperial physician would not lie to me. I lay on the bed, falling into a deep sleep, my body still convulsing in pain. Nanny Yu knelt outside the door, kowtowed and prayed to God day and night, asking me to wake up. There were bruises on her forehead, but she kept kowtowing. With tears in her eyes, she muttered, "Rao Rao, she has been ridiculed and looked down upon for so many years. She finally met someone she loves. Please let her live a good life. I am willing to sacrifice 10 years of my life in exchange for her." It turns out that Nanny Yu also noticed that I liked Xiaoli. He was born with a handsome appearance, a red mole between his eyebrows, and looked cold and charming. There must be many noble ladies in the imperial city who admire him. But he walked up to me at the wedding banquet, lifted my chin and asked, "Are you the silly girl from the prime minister's family?" The corners of his lips seemed to be smiling, and there must be contempt in them, but I felt sweeter than honey. Su Chu-wei is extremely smart. I am completely the opposite. I was born with deficiencies and have been a fool since childhood. From the very beginning, he married me because he saw that I was not very smart and could be easily manipulated. In the end, he can easily kick her away and give his position back to his sweetheart. And I foolishly gave my heart and soul to him for so many years. I couldn't bear to see Nanny Yu kowtow any further. Try to get back into your body. Only then did I realize that I couldn't go back and might have to die a little earlier. It was very strange that the prince, who was originally very annoyed with me and looked down on me, stayed by my side all the time, his eyes red from staying up all night. When no one was around, he climbed onto the bed and hugged my shivering cold body from behind. I lay calmly in Xiao Li's arms, letting him play with me like a paper doll. Xiao Li was very angry. I didn't understand why he was angry, and he bit the tip of my ear. I shivered and covered my ears. Fortunately, after it was separated from my body, I didn't feel any pain. "Mu Rao Rao, isn't punishing me enough? I didn't know you were so weak. The abortion pills would cause you to bleed profusely." He buried his face in my neck and begged me in a low voice, "Wake up, I will treat you well from now on." "You like children?" He paused, exhaled, and said slowly, "I can have another child with you." "Rao Rao, I'm sorry. He licked the blood drop from my ear tip that he bit and coaxed me softly, "Little fool, I never meant to kill you." He felt a little awkward and touched my flat stomach with a trembling palm. It's just that this child came at the wrong time. 06. My soul is unrestricted and I can see Su Chue being kept by him in the picturesque courtyard of the East Palace. The man she married is dead and she has returned to Shaoli. What did he mean by saying these things to me? I wish I were as smart as Su Chue so I could immediately understand the meaning of his words. I wouldn't be so foolish as to happily get pregnant with his child and then have him abort it with his own hands. It's a waste of pain. Besides, I have no future and will never have his children again. I won't live long after losing so much blood. He should be very happy. Soon you will be able to get rid of me, the foolish crown princess. I am not afraid of death. There is nothing in the East Palace that I would miss. Just a little afraid of pain. When I woke up, half a month had passed. There was no one in the hall. The palace maids gathered in the corridor to chat. None of them took a fool seriously, and no one thought that I would wake up. I propped up my weak body and glanced at the bronze mirror at the end of the bed. The person in the mirror had a pale face and dry yellow hair. I tried to smile in the mirror. He looked extremely ugly, skinny, and as if he was at the end of his rope. He's an extremely ugly fool. Nanny Yu, who helped me wipe my body and feed me medicine every day, cried with joy when she saw me wake up. For this reason, she rarely took out the attitude of the head nanny and scolded all the palace servants around me. She held me in her arms, calling me darling, and wiping her tears with her skinny hands. After not seeing her for only half a month, Nanny Yu's hair had turned completely white, and she was 100 times sadder than Shaoli. When she saw me staring at the mirror, she hurriedly took it down and stopped me from looking. She whispered softly, "Rara has passed the gates of hell, and everything will go smoothly for her in the future. She will definitely live a long life." I smiled sadly, and then I started crying. Burying her face in Nanny Yu's arms, she said softly, "Nanny, I'm dying. Wait for me for a few days and take me back to the Prime Minister's mansion. I want to be buried under the most beautiful peach tree. Mammy, please build me a swing. Also, don't allow Shaoli to come to the Prime Minister's mansion. I'm afraid of him and don't want to see him anymore." Nanny's eyes were red and she patted my palm. "Rao, don't talk nonsense." Pooh, this child is stupid, Bodhisattvas. Please don't bother with her." Aunt Yu was so anxious that she prayed to the gods and Buddhas in the sky for me. But I really won't live long. 07. The imperial physician came to take my pulse again. My long hair started to turn white and wither from the ends. "Your Highness, this is a sign of blood-draining disease. When your hair turns completely white, you will?" He sighed to cover it up. But I was smart for once and actually understood what he said. "When my hair turns completely white, I will die." "It's okay." I forced an ugly smile, not knowing who I was comforting. "Nanny, you will take me home. As long as I die, I can turn into a bird and fly out of the high walls of the East Palace. I'm tired of staying here." Shaoli simply didn't understand. I no longer liked him or this place at all. The imperial physician was soft-hearted and prescribed me a lot of painkillers. "My lady, these medicines only treat the symptoms, not the root cause. Be more happy. Being sad and emotionally unstable will not be good for your body. Don't let yourself get hurt. If you don't bleed, you can live longer." No one in the East Palace wants me to live longer. I still nodded obediently. I'm just used to it and try not to cause trouble to others. The imperial physician gave me a piece of pine nut candy that could only be bought outside the palace. He smiled and coaxed me. "When you feel pain, if you don't want to cry, you can eat some candy." Before Nanny Yu came in, I used scissors to cut off the white hair at the ends of my hair. She wanted to stop the imperial physician and ask about my condition and whether I really wouldn't live long. But she raised her hand and dropped it again. Her eyes were filled with sadness, as if every word she spoke weighed 1,000 pounds and she couldn't make a sound. After I woke up, Shaoli didn't come often. After all, he didn't really like me, and his sweetheart, the white moonlight, had moved into the East Palace. Although no one told me, I could smell a scent on Shally brocade clothes that I didn't like. I didn't go looking for her, but she came to see me, accompanied by many palace maids. The palace maids surrounded her and stared at me with eager eyes, as if they were afraid that a fool like me would do something outrageous and hurt others. But I did nothing. It took me a lot of effort to sit up from the couch with my weak body. She is so beautiful, with long, shiny castor-colored hair tied into an exquisite bun. She also speaks softly. I glanced at myself in the bronze mirror. As I had become thinner, my eyes looked particularly large and hollow on my face. Compared to her, he is so ugly. She called me Sister Crown Princess. Sister Crown Princess, it's really cold here. You just had a miscarriage, and didn't the Crown Prince ask someone to light a brazier for you? If you get sick, it will be hard for you to get pregnant again. The way she walks is like a fairy, and she looks everywhere gracefully and elegantly. The prince hunted a white fox for me and made a cloak for me. It shows that the prince is caring. He is too careless about you. I seem to understand what she said. It's always saying that the prince is not good to me. But isn't it common knowledge in the entire Eastern Palace that the Crown Prince treats me badly? She looked at me with a pitiful look, the same look everyone in the East Palace gave me. I suddenly don't like her very much. I felt that her voice, as clear as an oriole, also had a different kind of chilliness. She asked me like an old scholar, Sister Crown Princess, do you know what the virtue of being a queen is and what it means to be a role model for all women in the world? I put a licorice candy in my mouth and didn't want to pay any attention to her. She pursed her lips and smiled without showing her teeth. You naturally don't understand what I'm telling you. Back then, I was ignorant and had a quarrel with His Highness, so I abandoned him and married someone else. It's hard for you to be my crown princess for 3 years. If the crown prince divorces someone else, it will cause criticism, but if he divorces you, it won't. He was reluctant to be your wife for so long because of me. He told me that every time he touches you, he has to turn off the lights so that he can't see your face and suppress his nausea. Now that I'm back, not only should your children make way for me, but you should also disappear. I bit the candy in my mouth. Today's sugar is not as sweet as before. It tastes so bitter that it makes my eyes water. Am I getting sicker? Why does my chest hurt so badly? 08. I rubbed my wet and blurry eyes. I continued to embroider the tiger head belly band that I had not finished embroidering. I am very bad at needlework, and I am very slow at embroidering. I spent several nights embroidering the sachet for Shally, but he only took one look at it and threw it into the incense burner without a care, until it burned to ashes. I was embroidering a belly band for the baby in my belly, but before I finished, he was gone. I still want to embroider it and burn it for my unborn baby. It is the only compensation I can give to him for my brief time as a mother. Su Chu-wei was left out by me. She stretched out her slender fingers and snatched the belly band from my hand. The pointed fingertips left a bloody mark on the back of my hand. What else is there to embroider? She smiled brightly. The child is already dead, and his father killed him himself. She looked straight into my eyes like a knife, stabbing in and pulling out, then stabbing in again. Shally, what is your status? Will the future king of a country ask a fool like you to bear children for him? Mu Rao Rao, no matter how stupid and ignorant you are, you should understand. He hates you, and no one in the East Palace likes you. You are born stupid, a burden, and are hated by everyone. I was shaking all over, and even eating candy didn't help. Tears still fell. I used all my strength to snatch the belly band from her hand. It's still too late. Su Chu-wei stepped on it, and when I was about to catch it, she took it back and tore it in half right in front of me. The sound of tearing brocade was so heart-wrenching. My heart, at the same moment, was torn into pieces. The little tiger head with crooked stitching on it can't be put together at all. My baby was killed by his father himself, and he didn't even have the chance to wear a piece of clothing until his death. I held the scattered pieces, unable to hold back any longer, and burst into tears, my eyes full of tears. Why? I questioned her and everyone. I just want to finish embroidering a piece of clothing. Complete an unfulfilled wish. Am I not allowed to do that? Just because I'm a fool? When I came to my senses, I felt 2 slaps on my face. Shaoli arrived at some point, and Su Chue snuggled in his arms with tears in her eyes, with the mark of the slap clearly appearing on her fair face. I probably hit her. I tightly grasped the silk scraps in my hand, stubbornly refusing to bow my head, and saying nothing. Xiao Li pursed her lips tightly, with dark clouds in her eyes. He said angrily with heartache, "Apologize. Apologize to Miss Su." The imperial physician said that as long as I was not angry or sad, I could live a little longer. But I couldn't help it. I don't want to live anymore. My heart ached so much, as if my entire heart had been ripped out and thrown on the ground for them to step on. It hurt so much that I couldn't stand, and looked for Aunt Yu everywhere. This is not the Prime Minister's residence. They have been so mean to me. I want to go home. I'm not wrong. I raised my head and looked into Xiao Li's phoenix eyes defiantly. I used to think his eyes were very beautiful, with a long and slightly raised curve. At this moment, the cold and thin corners of his eyes slid into my heart like the tip of a knife, cutting me all over. She tore the belly band I embroidered for the doll. She is a bad woman. She is clearly the one who is wrong. Shaoli, even if you hit me again, I won't apologize to her. 09. As soon as I let go, the red silk was torn into pieces and scattered all over the ground. The bright red all over the ground made my eyes ache. Su Chue's face flashed with panic, and she said softly and aggrievedly, "Your Highness, I didn't mean it. I just wanted to see the embroidery in the hands of the crown princess. She didn't let me go, so it became like this." Shaoli just glanced at the ground and said indifferently, "It's just a torn belly band, Mu Raorao. Is this your reason for hitting someone? For such tattered belly bands, I can ask the embroiderer of the East Palace to embroider 10 or 8 of them for you as compensation. It's just a worthless piece of junk. It can't compare to Weir's face." I clenched my fingers tightly, digging my fingertips into my flesh, and used the pain to hold back my tears. This is different. I was not good at talking and couldn't argue with them. This is what I gave to our child. This sentence made Shaoli irritated. He hasn't even been born yet. He's just a lump of meat. He rubbed his brow impatiently. "Mu Raorao, as long as you apologize to Chu Wei, I will be with you again in the future. I don't want him to touch me anymore." He said that every time he touched me, he had to endure the nausea. There is no future either. Looking at Su Chue's shocked and uneasy eyes, I couldn't help it. My heart ached violently, and I vomited a large mouthful of blood in front of them. "Mu Raorao, what are you doing now?" Xiao Li's voice was stiff. After I spit out the blood, I felt much better, and the pain in my body was relieved a lot. It would be good to die like this. My doll is still waiting for me at the Naiha Bridge. He would call me mother. The only person who doesn't care that I'm a fool. Shaoli, I'm going to die soon, so I can make room for her as the crown princess. You don't like me, and I don't like you either. With blood on the corner of my lips, I cried and laughed. I can go home soon. Xiao Li panicked. He grabbed my wrist with great force, as if he wanted to crush it. "Mu Raorao, say it again." "What nonsense are you talking about? What death?" "I won't speak anymore." The nosebleeds started dripping again. The imperial physician didn't tell me that I would die so ugly in the end, with my hair turning completely white and blood oozing from all 7 orifices. I would not die until all the blood was drained out. I've never seen Xiao Li with this expression. He is mostly impatient with me. He was panicking and at a loss right now. I was like a fragile glass jar. He wanted to hug me but didn't know where to start. He didn't touch me and was stopped by Su Chue. Sister Crown Princess has always been in good health. The imperial physician has examined her pulse. How come she suddenly became ill? Is this blood real? I heard that some women used pigeon blood to pretend to have a miscarriage in order to win favor. She raised her eyes and smiled at me softly. Sister is simple-minded. Of course, she wouldn't do such a thing. She is indeed a talented woman famous in the imperial capital, and her analysis is very clear and logical. I looked at the blood all over the floor and felt like it was fake. Xiao Li's hands were hanging stiffly at his sides, and he stared at me intently. Mu Raorao, tell me if these are fake. It's fake. I just wanted to scare you.
10.
Of course, Xiao Li didn't believe me. He called the imperial physician who had been taking my pulse. I sat behind Xiao Li and blinked at him desperately. He was much smarter than me. He smiled at me soothingly and gave me a small bag of pine nut candy. My lady, eat something sweet. It will be good for your condition. Xiao Li frowned, blocking the eye contact between me and the imperial physician. Dr. Song, what is wrong with the crown princess? Why is she bleeding profusely? Is she serious? Xiao Li said this slowly. The doctor smiled faintly and said, It's just a fever. He vomited blood because of the anger. Your Highness, if you really care about her, don't make her angry. Xiao Li frowned unhappily. When has your Highness ever made her angry? It's always because she's being unreasonable. She beat Miss Su, but I won't bother with her anymore. The imperial physician stopped talking and quietly wrote the prescription. Xiao Li couldn't help asking again, can she really get better if she eats sweets? What disease can be cured by eating sweets? The imperial physician paused for a long moment and said, Heart disease. She has been ill for a long time and has always had pain in her chest. During these years in the East Palace, even breathing hurts her. Doesn't your Highness know this? After the doctor left, Xiao Li's face darkened. He was a little happy, but also a little unhappy. Mu Raorao, when did you learn to lie? Did the old slave beside you teach you? His voice was mocking and cold, chilling to the bone. My face flushed and I retorted, No, Aunt, you never taught me to lie. Didn't you say you were going to die? Why did the doctor say you are not sick? If you are a fool and you still learn to lie, it will only make people hate you more. If you want to die, then go ahead and die. Xiao Li and I had a big argument. I couldn't win the argument and just listened to him cursing me to death. A few days later, Xiao Li bought my favorite plum cakes. But I don't like eating food made by others. I only like to eat the pastries made by Aunt Yu. But Nanny Yu had already been sent back to the Prime Minister's mansion by me. Although I was stupid, I didn't want her to watch me become thinner and then bleed to death in pain. Mu Raorao, you must get better and continue to be my crown princess. When he said this, his brows were deeply frowned, and he looked very fierce. If I don't want to be the Prime Minister anymore, can you return me to the Prime Minister's mansion? He glared at me and said, No. Mu Raorao, the Prime Minister sent you to the East Palace to please me. If I didn't like you, I would have implicated them and punished them as well. I didn't dare to speak and ate the dry snacks in small bites, as if it was self-torture. Xiao Li didn't stay with me for long, not even until I finished my dessert. The maids in the other courtyard stood guard outside the palace. Your Highness, Miss Su had a nightmare and couldn't stop crying. We can't comfort her, so we can only ask your Highness to go over. Xiao Li hesitated. He looked into my thin face with his large, wooden eyes. Mu Raorao, you don't have anything to say? Don't you want to keep me here? Why should I keep him? Are you making eye contact with him? He still pressed me down on the bed. It hurt so much, and he didn't allow me to cry. I wish he would leave quickly. A maid came to urge. Your Highness, Miss Su is upset and wants to cut her wrists. Go and take a look. I said, Go ahead. Don't you like her? Xiao Li walked away, flicking her sleeves, full of anger. After Xiao Li left, I grabbed the corner of the table tightly and vomited all over the place. I vomited out all the pastries that I had just eaten with great difficulty. Fortunately, Xiao Li didn't see it, otherwise he would get angry for no reason and might even implicate my father. 11. I only have my dad. When my mother was pregnant with me, she was poisoned by the concubine in the backyard. As a result, I was born with deficiencies in the womb and had a brain defect. My mother died after giving birth to me. My father found out who poisoned my mother and killed her himself, but he still couldn't save her life. From then on, my father never remarried, and there was no more woman in the backyard. My mother gave me a longevity lock. It is the only legacy she left me. After marrying Xiao Li, I thought I was marrying the one I loved. On the wedding night, she happily gave the longevity lock to Xiaoli, hoping that her mother's spirit in heaven could also protect Xiaoli and keep her safe. But now I am dying. He doesn't love me either. Of course, I have to take back my mother's belongings and bury them with me. I ask Xiaoli, "Where's the longevity lock?" Xiaoli frowned, and her fingertips unconsciously rubbed together. "This is a little action he does when he is uneasy," he said softly. "It's just that the longevity lock made of silver is not valuable, and I can't wear it on my body. It's been so long. How can I remember it? If Rara wants it, I can have someone make a similar longevity lock out of gold." My eyes suddenly turned red. It's different. My mother went to the temple and asked a senior monk to forge it when she was pregnant with me. My name is engraved on it to wish me a long life.
It was my fault.
I shouldn't give away the things my mother left me so easily. So I'm dying soon. Is my mother in heaven blaming me? Xiaoli, I don't want anything. I won't pester you, and I don't want the position of crown princess. I cried and clutched his collar tightly. I just want the longevity lock. Give it back to me. Xiao Li's eyes turned cold. It's just a longevity lock. Isn't it enough for me to pay you back the gold? Murarao. Is it possible that the position of the crown princess and I are not as good as a broken lock? His face turned pale, and his eyes fell coldly on me. Can't compare. I kept shaking my head. He is not as good as my mother. He only knows how to laugh at me, hate me, and tell me to get out. He even slapped me in the face for Su Chuwei. After a long moment, he curled his thin lips and sneered. Then you'll never get that broken lock back. Murara, you are such a fool. You can't even tell the difference between what is important and what is not.
12.
Turning around, I saw the longevity lock on Su Chuwei by the koi pond. I touched my face, and it was covered with tears. My body curled up in pain, and every bone seemed to be trembling. His mouth was filled with the taste of blood through his clenched teeth. He didn't give it to me, just because he gave this longevity lock to Su Chuwei. From afar, I heard Su Chuwei's elegant and proud laughter. I've had nightmares these days and can't sleep well. Your Highness is very distressed. This longevity lock was given to me by the prince to calm my soul. Don't underestimate it. It was forged by Zen Master Xingyun from the National Temple. There is only one such lock in the world. I didn't say anything polite and rushed to Su Chuwei. He tried his best to pull the longevity lock off her neck. Su Chuwei reacted and she screamed and covered her neck. These days, I have become even sicker and thinner. There is no need for the palace maids around her to take action. Su Chuwei used a little force and pushed me to the ground. Why are you going crazy outside instead of staying in the palace, you idiot? My palms were rubbed and bleeding, but I didn't care. Su Chuwei, that's mine. That longevity lock is mine. Give it back to me. Su Chuwei laughed. Little fool, this is something the prince gave me. How can it be yours? I held back my anger and said, my name is on it. She turned the longevity lock and took a look at it. Her pretty eyebrows slightly frowned. So it's yours, but so what? The prince gave it to me, so it's mine. Unless you kneel down and beg me. The maids around her advised her. Miss Su, don't do that. If the crown prince hears about this, she is still the crown princess after all. Su Chuwei was as soft as a spring pear and said with a faint smile. I just lied to her. Her face turned cold. She pulled off the longevity lock from around her neck, raised her hand, and threw it into the lake. I jumped without thinking. Then, another plop sound was heard. The palace maids cried out in surprise. Oh no! Miss Su fell into the water. Miss Su can't swim. Someone come quickly. 13. Xiaoli rescued Su Chuwei, who had choked on water and fainted. He was soaked to the skin. The jade crown fell off, her long hair stuck to her face, and her eyes were frighteningly cold. The palace maids knelt in a circle by the lake, silent as a mouse. I was the only one still rising and falling in the lake, sinking again and again, looking for the longevity lock that she had thrown away. I heard him yell in pain. What the hell is going on? The maidservant beside Su Chuwei trembled and said, it was the crown princess. who pushed Miss Sue into the lake in order to snatch the longevity lock from her neck. Shaoli looked at me standing by the lake with empty eyes, as if there was nothing left. Moo Rao Rao, is that so? Like this?
Which one?
Are you going to hit me again? Force me to kneel down and apologize to Su Chuwei? The laughter of the people in the palace echoed in my ears one after another. Poor guy is a fool. The prince won't want her. Everyone hates her. My vision went dark and I raised my hand vaguely, as if I could touch my mother's face in the distant sky. That's it. Whatever they say is fine. I'm just a fool. No one will believe me. My body fell forward and I hit the cold lake water hard. Before he lost consciousness, he seemed to hear Shaoli's furious cry. Moo Rao Rao. I was sick, very sick, and could never get up again. I often bleed, either coughing up blood or having a constant nosebleed. I changed my clothes, but after a while, they were stained again by my unstoppable bleeding. Every time I woke up from my coma, I could see Shaoli sitting by the bed watching over me. His eyebrows were lowered, showing a rare tenderness and concern. Rao Rao, I have already found out. It was those palace maids who wrongly accused you. They have all been thrown into jail. No one will bully you anymore.
I didn't care about them.
I just looked into Xiao Li's eyes weakly. Where is my longevity lock? Xiao Li turned away her eyes and said, I will go to Gua Temple and ask Master Xingyan to make another one for you. Rao Rao, you are my crown princess. I want you to live a long life. I pulled my cold fingers away from his palm, burying his face back in the quilt. No more. I don't want it anymore. Give it to Miss Sue. You asked for a long life for me, but I don't want it. Shaoli was silent, and I could tell he was angry. He patiently brought the soup to the bedside and fed me.
Get up and eat something.
You are too thin. You can't lose any more weight. I imitated what he had done before and overturned the bowl in his hand. I don't want to eat. The corners of his eyes were red, and he looked at me angrily and hatefully. Moo Rao Rao, what do you want? I said very lightly. I want to go home and never be your crown princess again. 14. Shaoli drove away the palace servants, squatted down, and picked up the broken bowls one by one. He stood with his back to me for a while, his voice complex and low, slowly gathering anger. You are my crown princess, and you will be mine forever. I can't let you go home. He smiled faintly. Even if you die, you must be buried in the imperial mausoleum, together with me. After saying this, he seemed unable to bear it any longer, and hurriedly left the palace. From then on, a new person served me, an old lady who is somewhat similar to Nanny Yu. The palace maids were chattering under the lattice windows, saying that the prince was going to marry Miss Sue soon. Miss Sue is the white moonlight that your highness has been waiting for many years. Your highness, in order to save her, disregarded the rules between men and women. Miss Sue's innocence is gone. Your highness cares about her so much, the wedding will definitely be grand. Once the crown princess dies, Miss Sue will take over the throne. Oh, everyone is expecting me to die. I've been holding on to the position of crown princess for a long time, which is pretty annoying. The prince came in. He heard the palace maids laughing and joking, and his face became tense and terribly cold. The biggest rage I've ever seen. He ordered all the palace maids to kneel and slapped them dozens of times until their faces were disfigured and they could no longer make any sound. Get out! Get out, everyone! He walked up to me with unsteady steps and hugged me very tightly. Rao Rao won't die, right? His eyes became red and sparkling as they fell in front of me. Shaoli, who was so arrogant and treated me the worst, started crying. Dr. Song couldn't hide it. He still knew I was dying. God has already made you stupid and taken away something from you, so why can't he allow you to live 100 years? I don't know either. Maybe I have bad luck, so bad that I was born dumber than others and fell in love with someone I shouldn't have loved. I foolishly followed him into the East Palace and suffered a lot of injustice. But I am lucky that I won't live long and won't have to suffer forever. In fact, I am happy because I will be able to reach Naiha Bridge soon to see my mother and my baby. The atmosphere in the East Palace has been a bit weird lately. The palace maids dared not laugh or speak, and were more respectful to me than ever before. I asked them, "When will the prince marry Miss Sue? I need to set a time so that I can give up my seat." They were so frightened that the medicine bowls in their hands fell to the ground. They knelt on the ground and begged me for mercy. "My lady crown princess, I am just talking nonsense. Your Highness will not marry Miss Sue. You are the only one in the Eastern Palace." I blinked stupidly. That's not what I said before. But His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has always liked her, right? I jumped into the lake, and he only saved Miss Sue, and he got angry at me. The maids didn't know what to say. They opened their mouths and looked around. Finally, they could only say, "We don't know about these things either. If you want to know, please ask His Highness." 15. I didn't find a chance to ask Xiao Li. He went to the distant northern border, saying that he was looking for a magical medicine that only blooms on the top of snowy mountains. I guess Miss Sue is sick again. She was sick every other day, and the palace maids would come from time to time to ask the prince to come over and keep her company. I have been ill for such a long time, but the number of times Xiao Li came to see me is not even a fraction of the number of times she came to see Miss Sue. The night Xiao Li came back, he was covered in wounds, had a broken arm, and smiled more like a fool than I did. "Rao Rao, don't sleep, look at me. Look, I found the ice soul grass, and the doctor said it can cure your illness." I touched his forehead. Xiao Li froze, then moved closer and buried her forehead in my palm. "Rao Rao, I haven't had time to treat you well. Don't sleep. I'm so afraid that you will continue to sleep." I withdrew my hand and said seriously, "Xiao Li, you don't have a fever. Why are you talking nonsense? The doctor said my disease cannot be cured. He just lied to you." Xiao Li froze beside my bed. He used a lot of strength to hold the ice soul grass that he had found at a great risk of his life. My eyes are so red that they seem to be dripping out. My body was shaking, as if I was having the darkest and longest nightmare with my eyes open. Impossible. Those servants in the Imperial Hospital wouldn't dare lie to me. I'll go ask them. If they can't cure you, they will be buried with you. The ice soul grass was added to the medicine, and Xiao Li fed me one spoonful at a time. But there was no improvement. I fell asleep for longer and longer periods of time, until the next time I closed my eyes, I didn't know whether I would wake up again. When I opened my eyes, I saw the palace maids from the East Palace pasting wedding characters. "The prince is going to marry Miss Sue?" asked in a daze. They laughed. "My lady crown princess, it was His Royal Highness the Crown Prince who arranged your marriage. After the wedding, the queen's illness will definitely be cured. I have almost forgotten everything that happened a few years ago. The prince chose a fool like me among dozens of noble ladies. The queen was so angry that she stormed out on the spot. The wedding that the prince and I had was extremely simple. Neither the emperor nor the empress showed up, and there were very few guests. She was sent to the bridal chamber without even worshipping heaven and earth. At that time, Xiao Li said nonchalantly, "I have already fulfilled what the queen mother asked. I am also a woman and can carry on the family line. What else can the queen mother not be satisfied with? The wedding has already taken place. She is a fool. She won't care about the ridicule of the whole city, nor will she understand whether I have ignored her. This is the benefit of marrying a fool," he said coldly and indifferently, pulling up his thin lips. They said these words without any hesitation to me because they thought I couldn't understand them. But I understand. Many things were brought into the palace one after another, including a bronze mirror with carved patterns and branches, and the red lacquer dressing box that women loved the most. I don't have any use for it anymore. The night before our wedding, Xiao Li came to my palace. He took off his clothes and got into bed with me. He hasn't touched me once since Miss Sue came to the Eastern Palace. A palace maid once said that Miss Sue was his white moonlight, and the prince did this to protect her chastity and would not touch other women. I didn't understand the meaning of white moonlight, so I kept asking them. They laughed so hard that they fell backwards, then looked at me with pitiful and sarcastic eyes and said, "White moonlight, it's the moon in the sky. Beautiful and bright. I can't forget it." "Of course not, you idiot." What happened next? Shaoli fed me the abortion pills herself, and I came to my senses amidst the blood and excruciating pain. The white moonlight is everything to Shaoli. For the sake of the moon in the sky, he can turn into a Shura and hurt everyone around him, including his children. Shaoli's skin was close to mine, and one hand was loosely around my waist. Rao Rao, your body is full of bones. It hurts me. Wanna eat Jiangnan's 1,000-layer cake? I can order someone to drive 1,000 miles to buy it. As long as it's what you want. His eyes were bright and fell on my face. I just shook my head and suddenly asked him, Shaoli, why couldn't you be nicer to me earlier? His body was tense, he bit his lips, and his eyes were red. I'm treating you well now. Mu Rao Rao, can you get better? I can't. I don't want to get better either. Dr. Song is a miracle doctor. He could tell from taking my pulse that during these years in the Eastern Palace, even my breathing had to be cautious and painful. He hugged me and talked to me a lot. He said that he didn't marry me just because he failed to marry Su Chuwei. At the banquet, all the noble ladies sat upright and looked at him. I was the only one who ate my snacks carefree, my cheeks puffed up like the squirrel he had raised. He liked me too. I like my honesty, straightforwardness, and simplicity. My happiness and unhappiness are all written on my face. There is no other person like me in the East Palace.
And I was so sincere and kind to him.
But he realized it too late. Su Chuwei married Prince Lin out of spite against him, which made him remember it for so many years and couldn't let it go. When Su Chuwei entered the Eastern Palace, he couldn't find the same feeling as before. I didn't care and fell asleep while listening.
16.
On the wedding day, I drank a lot of bitter medicine before I could barely sit up. The white hair was also temporarily dyed black with graphite. When the palace maid was helping me put on the complicated and gorgeous wedding dress with 3 layers of inner and outer layers, Su Chuwei came. A beautiful woman's tears are also extremely beautiful. She was also wearing a similar red dress. With her fair skin and red clothes, she looked more like a bride today than me, a dying patient. Mu Rao Rao, today is my wedding with Shaoli. He just feels sorry for a fool like you. You have been obsessed with him for so many years and lost your child. He doesn't love you, he just wants to make it up to you. Do you know how many years Shaoli and I have been in love? You are a fool. Why did you pretend to be sick and snatch him away? He will regret it eventually, regret ignoring me and marrying you. There was hatred and a strange smile in her eyes. Are there large peony flowers embroidered on your clothes?
Ha!
This is my favorite flower, and Shaoli has never forgotten it. She stepped forward, and the palace maids did not dare to stop her. Su Chuwei pinched my wrist with her sharp nails and said, Mu Rao Rao, you are a thief. You stole Shaoli and also stole my wedding dress. He made this wedding dress for me. It's okay. She smiled generously. I don't want it anymore. I'll give it to you, a fool. If Shaoli really liked you, why would she let you wear someone else's wedding dress? My head hurts like a needle is drilling in it. I'll just give it back to you. I held back my tears and unbuttoned my clothes tremblingly. The maid who was doing her makeup held her down and said, My lady, you can't take off your wedding dress while you are wearing it. They lied to me at the same time. Don't believe her, Your Majesty. The crown prince wanted to marry you from the beginning. The wedding dress was also made according to your body shape by His Majesty. The gold thread and oriental pearls on it were selected by His Majesty himself. It has nothing to do with Miss Su. The peony symbolizes auspiciousness and grace, and is often seen on wedding gowns.
Yeah?
I simply can't tell who to believe. Or maybe everyone in the East Palace is lying to me. They loved to tease a fool like me, and spoke so sincerely, watching me being punished by Shaoli and watching me cry with grievances filled with grievances. Yes, this is everyone's favorite game. It doesn't matter.
I can go home today.
I cried for a while, then smiled with relief. Shaoli's sweaty hands held me tightly, very tightly, and did not let go at all. He said he had a nightmare last night, and his heart had been beating very fast since he woke up. I obediently wore the veil and followed him to the church. Shaoli asked me if I was hungry and if I wanted to eat something to fill my stomach. After a while, he asked me if I was tired and if I could stand. If I couldn't stand, he could hold me in his arms and get married. He had never been so gentle and patient. I was in a daze for a moment, wondering if he mistook me for Su Chuwei and that he had married the wrong person. After bowing to heaven and earth 3 times, he lifted my veil, his eyes like the bright moon, and he repeated again, "Rao Rao, get well, and be my crown princess for life." So scary.
I don't want it.
I want to go home. Suddenly, without anyone's expectation, I broke free from Shaoli's hand and ran outside, taking off my uncomfortable wedding dress. I feel much better without the pearls and gold thread tying me up. Shaoli caught up with her, his voice trembling like a thin line in the wind. "Rao Rao, come back." I run so fast. I have never run so fast in my life. If I turn into a bird, I can fly out of the high and cold palace walls. Mammy said, "Okay, take me home. I want to be buried under the peach tree. In spring, peach blossoms will cover my grave. In summer, peach fruits will fall into the soil, and I can taste their sweetness." Looking back, I saw Shaoli running after me. His pupils were shrunk into a line on his pale face, and he looked panic-stricken. "Come down, Rao Rao, and go home with me." I smiled, tears streaming down my face. "Okay, I'll be home soon." I jumped with my head raised. The setting sun lifted up my wedding dress. I heard his heart-wrenching cry, but no one could stop me from turning into a big bird with fiery red feathers. Fly and fly, fly out of the East Palace. As soon as you land, you're home. Extra.
Dira 1.
For imperial concubines, suicide is a serious crime. Even the queen could not be buried in the imperial mausoleum. Shaoli didn't know for a moment whether to say she was stupid or smart. The stupid person was smart for once. If she died of illness, she would be buried with him. But she did not die of the illness. Instead, she died on their wedding day. She was wearing the bright red wedding dress that he had chosen for her and died tragically in front of him. He didn't remember how he got to her. He held her limp body in his arms, and she still had a smile on her lips until she died. Shaoli vaguely recalled that during the years she had been in the Eastern Palace, she had hardly ever seen her smile. When she smiles, there are shallow dimples on the corners of her lips, and her plump red lips are upturned, making her look very cute and naive. When you see her smile, you can't help but smile too. But what did he say at that time? "Don't smile at me. You idiot, there's nothing funny about that. You look so ugly and stupid when you smile." He even wanted to deprive her of the right to laugh. He stayed by her body all night, and he probably understood the feeling of being chilled to the bone and having his heart and bones ripped out. The sharp knife pierced into her flesh, cutting off the tendons and memories that were connected to her flesh and blood. Spin, stir, and finally take out the whole heart. The coldness travels through the blood, taking away all the warmth. No matter how many clothes you wear, you can't resist the chill that makes you feel dead. Nanny Yu came to ask for the ashes and looked at the person in front of her in surprise. The proud and noble crown prince turned gray overnight. "If I had known I would love you so deeply. Why did you do that in the first place? Why bother?" Yumama knelt down and begged him. Being buried under the peach tree in the prime minister's mansion is Rao Rao's wish. The prince has hated her all his life. It's time to let her go home. He laughed, a senseless, dead laugh. "I won't allow it.
She didn't ask me when she left.
Even if she died, I wouldn't let her go. You are just a fool. Why do you play with me like this?" With his head full of gray hair, he cried like a child who had nothing. Nanny Yu sighed and said, "The prince has Raora in his heart. One day he will agree to let her go. Love in this world is torture, but also fulfillment." He drank a lot of wine and returned to the palace under the moonlight. Long ago, he forbade the lighting of any lights in the palace and could not bear the sound of palace maids running. Even the sound of branches falling under the weight of snow would wake him from his deep sleep. He rested his head on the beauty's lap, his drunken eyes slightly red and misty. "Rao Rao, she wanted to take you away, but I drove her away. I won't let you leave. I told you that a long time ago." The beauty said nothing, but gently brushed her fingers across his face, soothing him to sleep. When Shaoli fell asleep, his brows were still tightly furrowed. The beauty behind him took out a dagger that had been hidden for a long time and stabbed it into his heart. He was stopped by Shaoli, who should have fallen asleep due to drunkenness. There was no trace of drunkenness in his cold and fierce phoenix eyes. Only when he saw her face did he feel a wave of heartache. "Rao, do you want to kill me? You hate me, don't you?" The beauty covered her face and laughed like an owl. "Shaoli, she's dead." "I'm not that fool like Mu Rao." Shaoli shouted in pain. "Don't talk. The sound you make doesn't sound like her." Tears of pain flowed down the beautiful woman's face. "You are a lunatic. I hate you so much. Go to hell." She is a beautiful woman famous in the capital, with both talent and beauty. She and the prince are a perfect match. It's just that she was too ambitious and unwilling to accept that her status was not enough and she could only be a concubine. She just wanted to force him, but who would have thought that the queen would stop her? In a fit of rage, she married Prince Lin as his princess consort. Shaoli married the fool from the prime minister's family and made her the crown princess. She breathed a sigh of relief far away in the Lin Wang mansion. Shaoli still missed her in his heart, otherwise he would not have given up so many outstanding ladies and married a fool. It was paving the way for her, waiting for her to return to the imperial city and surrender. After Prince Lin died, she couldn't wait to return to the imperial city and entered the Eastern Palace. Although she had no name or status, she was able to reunite with the crown prince. She thought that as long as she waited, the prince would depose that fool sooner or later and marry her as his princess. But why did everything turn out like this? Mu Rao died as she wished, but Xiao Li went crazy. He broke her tongue and destroyed her face, and ordered the imperial physician to use the best medicinal herbs to repair her, gradually changing her into the appearance of that fool Mu Rao. He came to hug her every night, smiled at her foolishly, and told her that he missed her. She was not allowed to make any mumbling sounds. Completely treat her as Mu Rao's substitute, a substitute for a dead person. She wanted to kill Shaoli, but she was no match for him. All the love and indulgence he had ever given her were taken back by him one by one. She turned around and held the knife to her face. "Isn't this face what you care about? If I destroy it, you will never see her again and will slowly forget her." No. Shaoli was heartbroken. Later, he gave Su Chuwei a lot of medicine. She became obedient and stupid. She stopped struggling and said everything he wanted to hear. "Shaoli, I won't leave you. Shaoli, I like you, and I'm not going anywhere. Shaoli, it hurts here. Can you blow on it?" When he leaned over and blew on her wound, his eyes were red and his brows suppressed the old pain. When that silly girl hurt herself, she would also let him blow on her. He looked impatient, thinking that she was delaying his handling of government affairs, and he yelled at her to stop making trouble and get out of the way. Just when he thought he could slowly atone for his regret, Su Chuwei escaped. She was so smart and resourceful, she was not his little fool at all. She managed to pour out half of the stupid medicine he fed her and still maintained her lucidity. Just pretending, waiting for the opportunity to escape. Shaoli grabbed her back and she collapsed and screamed, "I don't want to go back, I don't want to go back to you. I'm not that fool like Mu Rao. You forced her to death and aborted your child with her. And you left me by your side. Even if she becomes a ghost, she will never forgive you." Shaoli stopped moving, and his eyebrows and eyes were covered with frost. He laughed at himself and said, "Yes, you deserve to die. Rao wants to see you die." Su Chuwei panicked and begged him again. "I didn't hurt her. You forced her to death, and I saw her jump right in front of me, and I couldn't catch her." He pinched Su Chuwei's face and said, "Sure enough, even if you change your skin, you still don't look like her. How dare you tell me that you did nothing wrong? You deliberately threw away her longevity lock and deliberately said that the wedding dress was prepared by me for you. Are those your things? You want to die. I'll grant your wish. But you have to give me back this face." Su Chuwei struggled with her hands and feet, shouting crazily, "Madman, crazy man. Mu Raorao would rather die than marry you. Shaoli, you will never get her forgiveness in your life. He smiled vaguely. The first snow fell on his long hair, which had already turned white. He took out the porcelain jar he carried with him, which contained the ashes of the black hair of his beloved. Shaoli put her face against the cold jar and asked in a trembling voice, Raorao, have you not forgiven me yet? In all these years, you have never been willing to enter my dream once. It doesn't matter. I will live alone till the end of my life, experience all the sadness in the world, and won't disturb your peace. After all, you hated me so much, and you died on the day I loved you the most. That moment when I wanted to be with you forever is something I will never forget. 02. Ever since the death of that unmentionable crown princess, the crown prince went mad and became cruel and stubborn. In his early 20s, his hair had turned white. The emperor did not want to pass the throne to a sinister and unstable madman. However, he risked the whole world's condemnation and forced the emperor to abdicate. The fire in the palace burned all night, and blood flowed like a river. He held a golden-laid Boshan hand warmer in his hands, his clothes unstained by blood, and he looked like a banished immortal. A drop of splashing blood stained his brow. Finally, the man standing in the firelight lost his saintly appearance and revealed the crazy smile of a ghost. What's good about being an emperor? He can mobilize the entire country to hunt down the Li dragon in the abyss and obtain the Li pearl of the living dead. After the crown princess died, he built an underground palace and covered it with ice that was continuously transported from Kunlun Mountain so that she seemed to be in deep sleep, immortal and indestructible. He did not care about the reputation of being a tyrant and recruited tens of thousands of brave generals. He finally killed the legendary Li dragon that was sleeping in Guizhou, South China Sea, and obtained the Li pearl that made all his dreams come true. With trembling hands, he placed the Li pearl, which he had bought at any price, into the chest of the woman who had been dead 10 years ago. Under his trembling, red, anxiously expectant and cautious gaze, the woman who had been dead for 10 years and whose body had already been mended woke up. She used her not very flexible tongue to ask the white-haired man in front of her in a soft and silly voice, "Who are you?" He cried uncontrollably and carefully, gently and softly hugged her, like a fragile treasure. "Raorao, have you forgotten me?" "How could you forget me?" He cried and laughed at the same time. A tyrant who had killed countless people cried like a heartbroken child and said, "It's okay if you forget me. Let's start over." He is like a considerate husband and a kind, gentle father. Teach her to walk again, to talk again, to write again, to call him Shaoli husband again. He couldn't be separated from her for even a moment. I can't hear her mention words like go home or leave. He would go mad and be so frightened that he would lose control of himself. What happened next? What happened next? White-haired monk, tell me. A few years ago, a bald monk with a limp and disfigured face came to the dilapidated temple in the village. He was dying, his eyes were lifeless, his heart was dead, and he looked more decadent and smelly than a seriously sick dog. The villagers felt sorry for him and gave him a few bowls of porridge and some hard-steamed buns, so he survived. The baldness gradually got better, and he grew a head full of messy white hair. The children in the village were afraid of him at first and called him a monster. Later, they found that he had a nice voice and could tell stories, so they surrounded him, called him the white-haired monk, and asked him to tell stories like the Arabian Nights. The white-haired monk is very old. He is so old that he can't remember the shape of the world or the details of the past years. But he could still tell that story clearly. Later, they got married. They got married again. This time, he held Raorao's hand tightly. From birth to death, he never let go for a single moment. The children sighed with satisfaction, and their mothers pinched their ears and took them home to eat. There was only one little girl, with her watery eyes wide open, who kept asking, "Has Raorao really forgotten? Has she really forgiven him?" It was an evening when the sunset filled the sky. She saw the white-haired old monk finish the story calmly and peacefully, then bend down, and keep bending down, as if doing so could resist the belated, burning pain that was gathering in her body. The invisible fire burned him from the inside out, devouring and burning every inch of his flesh. The little girl stepped back in fear and confusion. She didn't know that a person could make such a loud, long, and echoing cry.
Take all his body out.
A cry of life. On an ordinary night, he walked through the wild weeds and came to a peach tree with branches full of peach blossoms. There is an abandoned grave under the peach tree. He was like a wanderer returning home, a husband returning from the battlefield, lying beside the grave in a familiar manner, his white hair blown into the soil by the wind, and he hugged the grave. The Lee Pearl cannot bring the dead back to life. I weave a short, but extremely beautiful dream just for those who are so miserable that they see no hope. He tells the story. Cheating others. I also deceived myself. Over.